Naturally, I inquired why he had made a family card of his in-laws, as well, to which James chuckled and replied, "Because they are my family. They must have one family card, right?" "Got a problem with that," he added. "You wouldn't have anything to say if you knew who helped you when no one was there." His strong tone took me off guard, and I had never heard that from him. Was James always like this? He said, "If you are grateful, then do better with my family. Then you will be family to me. In a sense, you are in some kind of trial period until then." I had never heard of a trial period in marriage. James went on, seeing I was quiet. "In other words, you're not fully part of the family yet. If you don't like it, you can leave any time. For now, our family is just the six of us." I was shocked. After that, I immediately canceled all our joint credit cards and moved out. My name is Polly Cook, 30 years old. I'm a freelance illustrator. I used to work as a designer for a big advertising agency, but started on my own 5 years ago when I got married. Now I work from home. My parents died in an accident when I was young. I was raised by my maternal grandparents, but moved back to my parents' apartment near the city center for college. I've been living there ever since. I met my husband James at an Italian restaurant where he worked. It was a nice place with reasonable prices and good food, so my colleagues and I often went there. That's when James, the handsome waiter, became a topic of conversation. Indeed, he was good-looking. The manager once joked that a lot of the regulars came just to see James, and I could see why. I won't deny that I became one of James's fans because I thought he was really cool. He really stood out for some reason. We quickly became closer, and soon people were calling us a couple. Surprisingly, we ended up getting married. I don't remember much about that time. It's almost like I was in a daze. When I snapped out of it, I was married to a man I was calling my husband. But I loved James then and was happy when we got married. I quit my job as a designer at the company and started working independently. It was a friendly departure, and I continued the same kind of work, but on my own. James kept his job at the Italian restaurant, working different hours, sometimes late into the night. It became hard to work as usual, and I had always wanted to work independently, so I decided to go for it. "It's a good idea, Polly. It'll be easier for you. And it's great to keep doing what you love." James supported my decision. That's how our life as newlyweds began. We both didn't care for flashy things, so we decided not to have a wedding ceremony and just officially registered our marriage. We met each other's families briefly, and that was it. James went to work, and I worked from home and did the household chores. Our schedules were irregular, but we kept in touch and waited to have meals together when we were both home. It was a happy, simple life, and I thought, marriage is nice. But about a year after we got married, everything fell apart. "My family wants to come over. Is that okay?" James asked one day. Of course, I said it was fine. I had only met and briefly talked to James's family at our initial meeting, so I thought this was a good chance to get to know them better. Having lost my parents at a young age, I always admired James's large family. But when his family of 5 arrived, I was left speechless. "Hey, which room is mine?" his sister asked as soon as she walked into our house. James's sister, who is 35 years old and 3 years older than both James and me, worked at a local supermarket. I was shocked by her rude behavior, so different from the polite greeting she gave me when we first met. James's 22-year-old sister was also there, but she was quiet and just stood there without saying a word. I remember she barely spoke when we first met. Hurried by James's sister, I showed the 2 sisters to the guest room and James's parents to the room that used to be my parents' room. It was the only Japanese-style room in the apartment, so I thought it would be best for them. After settling into their rooms, James's sister announced, "Well, since we're going to be living here together, you better start serving our family properly." I was confused by what she meant, but when I looked at James for help, he just laughed in a way I had never seen before. It turned out his family had given up their own home and moved into my apartment without telling me. "Sorry, our family home suddenly had to be vacated, and they had nowhere to go," he explained. I wish he had told me earlier. I had thought it was just for a day or 3, and this was really inconvenient. When I mentioned this to James, trying not to upset him, he looked down and apologized. "Please, just until they find somewhere else to go," he pleaded. I couldn't say no. How could I turn away people in need, especially the family of someone important to me, without even a place to go? I reluctantly agreed to live together on the condition that they find a new place as soon as possible. But I would come to regret this decision. James's family showed no restraint. All 4 of them, from the day they moved in, did nothing and left everything to me, saying whatever they wanted. They made no effort to look for a house or a job. When I asked about their jobs, I was in for another surprise. "Oh, I quit that lousy supermarket job," she had said. She was employed, but apparently it was just part-time work. I had thought she worked full-time because of her age, but she told me she hadn't had a steady job since high school. James's parents also had part-time jobs, which they quit before coming here. And of course, James's other sister was unemployed. She had claimed she was a student, but that was not true. "Why should I work when I've become part of a wealthy family?" she asked. When I asked who she was talking about, I got another shocking reply. "You, of course. You got a big settlement and insurance money from your parents' accident, and you don't even have a mortgage on this apartment. You can live without working," James's sister said, laughing. I complained to James when he got home, but he yelled in a way I had never seen before. Everyone's tired from suddenly having to leave their home. Let them rest for a while, or do you want to kick out my family, Polly? Stunned, I froze. Then James suddenly softened his tone. "Sorry for yelling. I'm having a tough day too. Can you just be a little more patient?" Looking back, James was skilled at manipulating situations with a mix of kindness and harshness. But at that moment, I didn't see it and agreed to endure a bit longer. The tyranny of James's family got worse. They treated me like a servant at home and demanded money when going out. "We can't job hunt without a penny, can we?" "It's fine, but if we can't find work, we'll just keep living here," they said. I reluctantly gave them some money, which they claimed to have spent without finding jobs. They probably never looked for work, but if I said that, they would accuse me of lying without proof, and James's whole family would blame me for hours. Telling James didn't solve the problem. Everyone's frustrated about not finding jobs. "Sorry, just bear with it a little longer. I'll talk to them," James said, trying to smooth things over. But as time went on, I felt like saying anything was pointless. However, the frequency of them asking for money gradually decreased, perhaps because James said something, so the issue seemed to resolve itself. Of course, the money I had given them was never returned. Then after about 2 months of living this way, I noticed something alarming. Why is the credit card bill so high? Could it be unauthorized use? When I quickly checked the credit card statement, all the charges were made with family credit cards. The purchases included food, drinks, books, games, and even expensive brand bags and clothes. Each item was labeled with a number from 1 to 6, showing that 6 family credit cards had been issued. These credit cards were in my name, with James using the family cards. "It seems like you'd be better at handling this, and it's more convenient to consolidate payments, right? Can I leave it to you?" He had said, and I ended up managing them. But it turned out these family cards had been issued without me knowing. James's family stopped asking for money because they could now make credit card payments and cash withdrawals. When I confronted James about why he made family cards for his in-laws without asking me, he laughed and said, "Well, you complain when they say they have no money, so what choice do I have? Besides, you know who took you in when you were all alone, right? Can you really say such things to the important family of your benefactor?" I was stunned into silence by his bold tone, unlike anything I had heard before. Was James always like this? "If you're grateful, you should serve my family more. Then I'll acknowledge you as family too. Until then, consider it like you're on a trial period," he continued. I had never heard of a trial period in marriage. Seeing my silence, James pressed further. "This means you're not yet an official family member. If you don't like it, you can leave any time. Right now, it's just the 5 of us in our family. Useless parasites get out." That's when I realized James's true nature. I felt as if all the blood had drained from my body. Shocked, I considered divorcing James. In fact, I began to wonder why I had married James in the first place. Initially, I just thought he was a handsome guy. Like the other girls, I was just excited about him being handsome without any particular reason. Then one time, when I went to the restroom, James approached me. "You seem different from other people, Polly." I don't know, kind of mystical. Sorry, it's not something I should say to a customer. I was surprised but kept listening, and I gradually started to pay more attention to James. Maybe that was his plan, to make me like him. When I think about it calmly, it makes sense. I remember once when James came to our table for small talk, a colleague jokingly said I was a wealthy lady living alone in a condo. It was right after that he started talking to me, probably because he was interested in my wealth and the condo. Honestly, James wasn't really my type. To put it nicely, he was modern. To put it bluntly, he seemed a bit frivolous. I liked mature men who spoke quietly and seriously. But somehow, I ended up falling for James. I always found that strange since James was the typical handsome guy, and it must have been easy for him to charm a woman, especially someone like me who was new to the workforce and not used to men. I fell for his tactics and ended up marrying him. This thought made me feel so frustrated and embarrassed. I felt like destroying everything in the house, but I wasn't foolish enough to act on that impulse. Instead, I decided to get revenge. To do that, I needed to endure this life a little longer, just like James manipulated me. I planned to control his entire family. The condo we live in was bought by my father with a mortgage soon after I was born. It wasn't very expensive back then, but the area developed rapidly with a new shopping center nearby, and now it's considered a luxury condo. My parents, hoping for more children, bought a spacious condo. That's why there's enough room even with James's family moving in. But even with its decent size, having James's family around is a nuisance for me, especially working from home. I'm enduring this only for the sake of revenge. As James' sister said, there's no mortgage payment for this condo. When I was 4, both of my parents died in a car accident. They were coming back from my paternal grandfather's funeral when they collided with a speeding car on the freeway. That day, I was supposed to go with my parents, but I caught the flu that's going around and had a high fever. So my maternal grandparents came to the condo where we lived with my parents to take care of me, leaving me as the only one who survived. The mortgage payments were covered by the group credit life insurance, so the only housing costs I pay are the management fees and property taxes. James, seeing the amount, said he would contribute just a bit more than that to our household expenses. There's no mortgage, so if I put in that much, we should manage with Polly's income, right? We'll each use our own earnings for personal expenses. Sounds good, doesn't it? I agreed, thinking maybe he was right. Until then, I had been paying for everything by myself, so I thought his contribution would lighten my load. Looking back, it was foolish, but at the time, I was blinded by my love for James and just went along with whatever he said. James probably thinks he's the head of the household and the one supporting me, which is why he can so easily call me a parasite. But in reality, it's different. I pay for most of the expenses like utilities, food, social expenses, and entertainment. Now 5 real parasites had been added to my household, making it impossible to manage with just that amount. I wanted to get rid of them as soon as possible, but I pretended not to notice and endured. I gritted my teeth and let James's family freely shop, reminding myself that I'll be the one laughing in the end. Then 5 months after deciding to divorce, the date of act finally came. I'm tired. Please decide. It's either me or your family, I told James, presenting him with a final decision. He was surprised, but I continued without concern. None of your family members lift a finger to help around the house. They just dump all their chores on me. You know I work from home. I'm not just playing around. Yet they treat me like a freeloader and tell me to know my place since you're supporting me. I've had enough, I cried. I confronted James. He smirked at me and said, "Then you should leave." Didn't I tell you before? You're not really part of this family yet. Giving up like this means you didn't earn your place in the family. I acted shocked as I looked at him. What are you surprised about? If you can't live with my family, then you're the one who has to leave. Oh, and since I'm not at fault, I'll take this apartment as alimony, and I'll take half of your savings as part of the property division. Ah, so that was his plan all along. That's why his whole family kept harassing me, trying to drive me out. I knew it, but hearing it said outright was still a shock. It was someone I once loved and even married. But thanks to this, I made up my mind. Fine, I said, deciding to divorce James. But this condo is mine, and I'm not at fault either. What did you say? James seemed shocked that I outright rejected his proposal, not expecting such a response. It made sense as I had always complied with his demands since our marriage. Thinking back on it made me angry. I don't want to spend another second with you all, so I'll leave now, but you should also prepare to leave. It's a joke, right? This is our home. We won't leave. Ever heard of residential rights? You can't just force people out who live here, James shouted. Ignoring his ranting, I left the house and went to my grandparents' place. I explained everything and asked if I could stay until things were settled. My grandparents were shocked to learn what I had gone through and scolded me for not consulting them earlier. With tears in their eyes, I apologized. "Grandma, Grandpa, I'm sorry for worrying you, but I'll be okay now." "I look fragile, but I'm not really," I said, forcing a laugh with tears in my eyes. The day after I left the apartment, James contacted me right away. "Hey, what's this all about?" "What are you referring to?" I asked about the certified mail. I was impressed by how quickly things were moving. I had handed the divorce proceedings over to a lawyer, and when I told them yesterday that I was leaving the house, they arranged for everything to be sorted out today. "I'm not paying any alimony, and I'm not leaving the condo," James declared. But legally, he had an obligation to pay, and he didn't have the right to continue living in that apartment. "What are you talking about? That apartment is mine too since we're married. If you insist, then pay me half its value to buy me out," he said. Such an absurd claim. Talking like this is getting us nowhere. "Please communicate through my lawyer from now on," I said, ending the call. I knew he would probably call again tomorrow, but I had no desire to talk anymore that day. As expected, he called the next morning. "Hey, what's this all about?" He repeated the same line as yesterday, showing no creativity. What are you referring to? The card's not working. What did you do? What I did was cancel it. That card was mine, and you were just using the family card, remember? Indeed, before leaving the house, I had switched all the contracts from that card to another and canceled it. Of course, the family cards would stop working when I canceled mine. I was the one paying for it. Yes, you paid the apartment's management fee and property taxes just for the first 4 months. It's not much, but I can deduct that from the alimony if you like. I mocked him. I heard some indistinct shouting from the other end of the phone. That's right. James only paid the agreed amount for just 4 months. He made various excuses about the store and whatnot, always finding a reason to ask me to wait. But then he stopped paying altogether. If he forgot and thought he was still paying, that's some poor memory. But I didn't care anymore. He's someone I'm cutting ties with. His memory doesn't matter to me. That's the situation, so please pay your half of the living expenses I've been covering. I've kept a detailed record of our household expenses, which I'll use as evidence to fairly divide our savings. It's marital property, he demanded. Yes, I understand. Let's split it accordingly, I agreed. He ended the call with a reminder not to forget. A few days later, I got another call from him using the same line. I realized they lacked not only memory, but also vocabulary. What do you mean by the split of shared property? Why is it 0? You must be rolling in cash from your parents' insurance and alimony, he said. Ah, so that's what they were thinking. I patiently explained that my savings before marriage weren't part of the shared property, and since we had no savings after marriage, it naturally amounted to 0. Don't lie to me. If you think I'm lying, why don't you consult with someone? From now on, please communicate through my attorney. I won't be speaking to you directly anymore. Goodbye, I said, then hung up the phone and blocked James's number. 1 month after I left the house, James and his family finally moved out of the apartment. Not because they had a change of heart, but because they couldn't sustain their lifestyle. Naturally, James's income alone wasn't enough for a family of 5. They were used to shopping extravagantly with my card. Telling them to cut back now was impossible. I had let them use the card intentionally, knowing it would come to this. His family started pestering James for shopping money, and when he refused, they began stealing from his wallet. Even when James got angry, they blamed him for kicking me out. To top it off, the electricity, gas, and water were all shut off. Of course, I had arranged for that since I didn't plan to live there for a while. James tried to get the utilities restored immediately by phone, but the house was in my name, so no one else could reconnect them if the owner had stopped them. During the hot summer and early fall, his family couldn't handle the extreme heat and eventually left the condo. Where they went, I neither know nor care. James tried to stay until the end, but he eventually gave up because there was no electricity and he couldn't bathe. The divorce proceedings went faster than expected, not because James had a change of heart, but because he made mistakes. He cheated on me while we were still married, or rather he started making moves on someone thinking he could kick me out soon. He boasted about owning a luxury apartment in a prime location downtown, using it to attract young girls. It's surprising he did this while his family was around, but he had a history of such behavior, so they didn't mind. Before leaving, I had installed cameras in several places in the house, which captured all the evidence. Maybe he underestimated me, but he really did disrespect me. He brought his family into my home without my permission, made a family card, left me the bill, kicked me out, and cheated on me. I demanded a hefty sum in alimony for all these. When James saw the amount, he turned pale and desperately pleaded for reconciliation. But I had no such intentions. Knowing he couldn't pay, I made him borrow as much as possible from his company and took whatever I could get. When I threatened to sue him for fraud over the family card, he reluctantly agreed to my terms. Well, I hope he does his best to pay off his debt. The divorce is finalized, and I'm still staying at my grandparents' place. I haven't decided what to do with the apartment yet. I might sell it. I treasured it because my parents left it to me, but since they passed away when I was very young, and I have no memories of them, plus all this has happened, I think they'd understand if I let it go. My work as an illustrator is picking up. I might live alone again, but it's a good time for that. I can work just fine staying at my grandparents'. I'll depend on them a little longer, then move forward with strength. Next time, I won't be fooled by a man who's only good-looking. I hope to find a partner I can share my life with. I'm an elite banker, so I deserve to remarry a beautiful and competent girlfriend. Being with a gloomy woman like you is bad luck for me. I'm divorcing a useless person who doesn't earn a penny. How can you say that? What about our child? What are you planning to do? You take care of Lily. I'm going to have a new child with my mistress. Left by my husband with my daughter, and to make matters worse, he started talking about remarrying after getting his mistress pregnant. Fed up with my husband's attitude, I decided to divorce. The divorce went through smoothly, but I had other important things to do. I went to my husband's workplace to handle an important procedure where my husband and his mistress, smirking, approached me. "Did you miss me so much that you came to my workplace?" "Haha, you must have come to withdraw savings since you don't have money as a housewife, right?" Facing the two of them looking down on me like trash, I told them with a cold expression, I came to withdraw $6 million. Upon learning that I had won a large sum from a lottery ticket I bought on a whim, my husband desperately begged for my forgiveness, completely changing his tune. My name is Emily. I am currently 32 years old. My childhood dream was to become a caregiver. I wanted to be helpful to people. After graduating from high school, I attended a specialized school for care welfare and successfully passed. I was able to fulfill my childhood dream. Working as a caregiver was hard, but I found great fulfillment in being thanked by the patients. One day, I was invited to a mixer by a close coworker. There I met Ethan. My first impression was, wow, he's handsome. I wanted to talk to him, but he seemed like the cool, quiet type, and I wondered if he disliked such events. However, as luck would have it, we were headed in the same direction afterward. As we walked to the station together, I found he was surprisingly talkative, and we had a great time. Ethan was just shy, not cool or anything. I found that gap endearing. We quickly became close and decided to get married. However, through mutual acquaintances, I later learned that Ethan had another girlfriend at the time. I was shocked to discover it was a case of two-timing, but I only found out after we were married. Regardless, I believed he had chosen me purely out of love. In the early days of our marriage, we enjoyed watching sports and going to the movies on our days off, fully enjoying our newlywed life. Buying lottery tickets became a shared hobby. It started when we first stumbled upon a lottery ticket vendor while going to a sports event. We bought a sports lottery ticket on a whim. Surprisingly, we won. It was probably beginner's luck. It wasn't a huge amount, but we got quite into it, buying small amounts regularly. For example, we'd buy tickets on days considered lucky, or if my horoscope was good that day. It was one of the few hobbies we both enjoyed. By our 4th year of marriage, we wanted a child but were having trouble conceiving. We were considering fertility treatments when we discovered I was pregnant. That's great, Emily. We're finally going to be parents. When I confirmed the positive pregnancy test, my husband was teary-eyed with joy. I'm so happy. But we can only be sure after going to the OBGYN, right? I'm so anxious, but somehow I feel everything will be okay. It's just a hunch. The next day, I nervously went to the OBGYN. The doctor confirmed on the ultrasound, "Congratulations, you are pregnant." I could see for myself that I was indeed pregnant. I was so happy that I immediately emailed my husband from the hospital's waiting room. I'm pregnant, just entered the 5th week. Once we're in the safe period, we need to tell both our parents. The email was read immediately, and he replied, "Really? That's great. I'm so happy. Thank you, Emily. Please take care getting home." He usually takes a while to respond, but he must have been really happy this time. I returned home savoring my happiness. That night, "It's going to be exciting from now on, Ethan. Do you want a boy or a girl?" Tough choice. I'd be happy with either, but if it's a girl, I might be too sad when she gets married. If it's a boy, it'd be fun to play a lot while he's small. Well, yeah, but if it's a girl, I'd love to talk about love stories with her. We had such light-hearted conversations while eating dinner. Soon after, we found out the baby's gender. Throughout the pregnancy, my husband supported me, and although it was tough, I had a happy maternity life without any major problems. Time flew by, and I safely gave birth to a lovely baby girl we named Lily. We talked about overcoming challenges together as a couple, but after the pregnancy and birth, I quit my job. Originally, I worked as a caregiver, which was physically demanding and involved night shifts, so continuing was difficult. However, my husband's attitude changed drastically after I became a full-time housewife. When we both worked full-time, we shared household chores. But once I became a housewife, he would say things like, "You've been at home all day, right? Why haven't you cleaned? You must be bored, right? Make more elaborate meals." And started to berate me with his attitude like that. Our marital relationship gradually weakened. And although we shared a bed, our intimate life became non-existent. He only tolerates sleeping in the same bed because he has nowhere else to sleep. He even says, "I don't even want to sleep with you." I think to myself, then sleep on the floor, but I can never actually say that. We hardly have any meaningful conversations anymore. Ethan only talks about practical matters. Even when I try to initiate a conversation, he doesn't listen and just responds indifferently. "Hey, about the drama yesterday. Listen, today, Lily. Did I see?" That's how our conversations go. He only responds with "etch" or "I see." He doesn't seem interested in expanding the conversation. The only time he gives a proper response is when he's angry. "What's this food? It's too bland. I can't enjoy this meal. I thought too much flavor isn't good for health. Shut up. You can't cook. Your cleaning is sloppy. You're completely useless at everything. If I hadn't married you, a woman like you wouldn't have been picked up by anyone." He often says things like that. Eventually, he even treats our 3-year-old daughter Lily coldly. "Daddy, look. Lily drew this." She shows him a drawing of him, but he just dismisses it with, "Oh, I see." A child wouldn't grow fond of such a father. Still, I try hard not to upset him and avoid fights. But lately, I've been thinking, Emily thought, am I just a housemaid under the guise of a housewife? At home, he's like this, but he works at a major bank. My friends envy me, saying, "Wow, a banker husband. You're so lucky, and he seems to love you so much." Indeed, Ethan is good at keeping up appearances. Once at a friend's wedding, he said in front of everyone, "Emily is great at cooking, cleaning, and laundry. She's a really good wife." Hearing this, my friends were all excited, exclaiming, "Wow, that's so sweet." However, in reality, at home, He has no interest in me or our daughter and is just an abusive husband. He's a completely different person at home and outside. And my husband Ethan was incredibly selfish. On weekends, he'd leave without saying where he was going, returning home past midnight, never helping with household chores or childcare during the week. I never knew when he'd finish work. He'd come home late without any explanation. And if I asked, he'd snap, "What I do and where I go is none of your business. Just be grateful that an elite like me brings money home." He'd even say, "You're always at home, but can't handle household chores. A useless person like you has no right to complain to an elite like me. You've lost all your charm and don't look like a woman anymore, just using childcare as an excuse." I was devastated and cried when he first said that. Despite that, I didn't give up and tried to rebuild our relationship. But with Ethan hardly ever home and always in a bad mood in the mornings, our lives just drifted apart. This led to a de facto separation within our home. Others might think I should just get a divorce. Indeed, the thought of divorce had crossed my mind many times. But as a full-time housewife, could I raise my young daughter Lily alone? Would I be able to find a job quickly if I started job hunting now? I worried about whether I could fulfill Lily's wishes like attending classes or going to college and provide her with a comfortable life. One day, I was at the supermarket alone buying groceries. Then I saw a lottery stand in the corner with a sign that said, "Lucky Day." Emily thought I used to buy lottery tickets with Ethan when we saw that sign. Those were happy times. I reminisced about the happier days, but those seemed like a distant past now. Ethan had changed. In a fit of desperation, I went to the lottery stand, buying a ticket alone for the first time. I thought, why not, and bought one. I might even talk to Ethan about buying the lottery ticket. If I win, maybe we could have a light-hearted conversation like we used to, like, "Let's do this," or "Let's go there." With that faint hope, I returned home. But even that day, Ethan didn't come home until after 10 p.m., after putting Lily to bed. I was watching TV on the living room sofa when I got a call from Ethan's phone. "Hello, what time are you coming home?" "Are you Ethan's wife?" I heard an unfamiliar woman's voice. A bad feeling washed over me, and I felt a chill. "Who are you?" "I'm Karen. I'm Ethan's girlfriend. Your husband is sleeping right next to me." The caller was Ethan's mistress. "I've been wanting to talk to you. I love Ethan, and he feels the same. To be blunt, we want you to get a divorce." Ethan said, "My housewife wife is almost done serving her purpose. He'll probably bring it up soon, so please start preparing for the divorce." I was furious at my cheating husband, but I had been unaware of his affairs before and during our marriage. I had suspected him of cheating. He always came home around 10 p.m. on weekdays and was never home on weekends. He was glued to his phone and avoided any physical contact with me. While I wasn't surprised by his affair, Karen's brazen and unapologetic manner made my skin crawl. Her confident and triumphant tone, and the thought of Ethan sleeping soundly at his mistress's house every night, phone in hand, made my blood boil. "I see. I can't say anything without talking to my husband, so I'll end the call now. Let's talk again later." "No, it'll be the same even if you talk to Ethan. I'm pregnant. It's Ethan's child. Please get a divorce as soon as possible for the sake of this baby in my belly." Karen's statement left me speechless. "Pregnant? You must be kidding." "No joke. I'm an elite banker. I'll provide for Karen and the baby," Ethan said. "So I'll marry him, and we'll raise this child together. Time for a wife swap, haha. Oh, and can you send Ethan's stuff over to my place quickly? This woman must be out of her mind. I have a precious, beautiful daughter at home. And Ethan parading around as an elite banker everywhere was just appalling. I was so fed up that I calmly asked for her address instead of arguing. "All right, what's your address?" I said. She replied, "Oh, aren't you obedient? It's at XX Town, YY City." I noted it down meticulously and hung up. Ethan returned home late, admitting to the affair as soon as I confronted him about Karen's call. "Oh, she just spills everything, haha. I'm an elite banker, so I deserve someone beautiful and confident like Karen. I stayed with you, a mere housewife, thinking you might be useful. But lately, I've realized that being with a gloomy woman like you brings down my luck. I'm divorcing a useless person who doesn't earn a penny, haha." His cruel words felt like sharp stabs to my heart. "Luck, useless housewife, but we have a daughter to think about." I gathered my strength to ask, "What about Lily?" "You take care of Lily. I'm going to have a new child. Of course, I'll pay the property division. A mere housewife like you can't live without it, haha. Unlike you, it's easy for a high earner like me to pay property division, haha. No apology, no regard for our daughter." Does this man even have a heart? Something inside me snapped. I had no more attachment to this man. I had to protect my daughter alone. Ethan kept talking about Karen, who I hadn't even asked about. She was a 24-year-old newcomer at his office, popular and beautiful. Ethan gleamed as he said, "I'm leaving you, an old lady, to start a second life with someone young and cute like her." His words in his affair had hurt me deeply, but I couldn't even cry. I just wished for their misfortune. Ethan left that day with minimal belongings, saying he'd send the divorce papers once everything was settled. He didn't return the next day or the day after. He was probably staying with Karen. I started preparing for the divorce. I consulted a lawyer before filing, as I heard it's better to arrange property division beforehand. I sent Ethan's belongings to the address Karen gave and began preparing to move back to my parents' house with Lily. While clearing out the house, I found more of his stuff and contacted him. "I found more of your belongings while cleaning," I said. He casually replied he'd come the next day to collect them. The following day, Ethan arrived, and to my surprise, Karen was with him. "Nice to meet you, ex-wife. I'm feeling sick from morning sickness. Did you sign the divorce papers? Can you hurry up and finalize the divorce?" Karen was indeed beautiful and much younger than me. Seeing Ethan holding her, seemingly pregnant, was revolting. I just wanted them to leave quickly. "Here are the divorce papers and your belongings," I said, handing over the completed divorce papers. Ethan roughly signed them and handed them back. "Here, make sure you file these today." Sure, I replied. With that, they left. I sighed in relief. Now I had important procedures to handle beyond the divorce. The divorce with Ethan was finalized, and I received a lump sum property division payment. It was only to be expected, given his frequent boasts about being an elite banker. A week later, I visited the bank where Ethan worked for an important matter. Ethan approached me with a smirk as I tried to proceed with my business. "What, you miss me?" "You're hung up on me, huh?" Then Karen, who was supposed to be at the reception, came out too. "Oh, look who it is, the ex-wife. What are you doing here? Let me guess, you're a housewife with no money, so you're here to withdraw savings, huh?" Haha. Their sarcasm was unbearable. "No, I'm here to withdraw something else." "What, $6 million? What?" Yes, the lottery ticket I'd bought at the supermarket turned out to be a winner. When I used to buy lottery tickets with Ethan, we would excitedly check the results together. But this time, I bought it alone and didn't expect much. Casually checking the results online, I saw the message, "Congratulations on your win." I scrolled down, thinking it was just a small prize. but saw an amount I had never seen before. Prize amount $6 million. Counting the digits, I realized it was $6 million. I was in shock and just stared at the screen, unable to move. The whole day felt like a dream, and I couldn't focus on housework or childcare. The next day, I checked again on my computer, and it still showed $6 million. I followed the instructions for claiming my prize, feeling somewhat detached as if it were happening to someone else. I checked with my lawyer whether a lottery win before a divorce would be subject to property division. But since the divorce was due to Ethan's actions, and our relationship had broken down, it was not subject to division. When I explained this to them, Ethan and Karen were incredulous. "What? Why didn't you say that? That's not fair. It should be part of the property division. You cheated and got your mistress pregnant, and you're saying this isn't subject to division. I've already confirmed it with my lawyer." "That's a lie." Ethan raised his voice. "When we were together, we never won that much. Why didn't you use your luck with me, useless wife? How can you get all that money? You said it yourself, didn't you? Being with a gloomy woman like me brings down luck. Maybe the bad luck was because of you, huh?" Karen pulled at Ethan's arm, saying, "What's with this woman? Ethan, let's go. It doesn't matter how much money she has. Let's just leave." But Ethan didn't move and said something unbelievable. "Hey, Emily, I'm sorry. Let's get back together, huh? I was wrong to belittle you and have an affair. Let's start over." "What? What are you saying? You promised to support me and our baby. You said you loved me, and now you want to go back to your ex-wife. But with $6 million, we could quit our jobs, buy a house, a nice car, go on trips. Wouldn't that be great?" Ethan, blinded by money, proposed getting back together. His despicable words ignited a fireball of anger inside me. "You are a terrible person. I couldn't believe I had spent years living with such a despicable man. I'm sorry for everything until now. I'll cherish you from now on. Let's reconsider, huh?" Ethan grabbed my arm and wouldn't let go. I shouted back, "Don't you dare joke with me." He seemed surprised by my outburst and flinched. At that moment, someone from the back of the bank approached us. "Ethan, what's going on?" "Mr. Branch Manager." The person was the bank's branch manager. Ethan and Karen were flustered at his arrival. "Nothing. It's nothing." "I heard about what's been going on from a staff member. Are you sure it's nothing?" "Well, it's just that. I'll talk with you later about this and your relationship with Karen." Ethan and Karen's faces turned pale. I guess the bank wouldn't take kindly to infidelity and pregnancy scandals being openly discussed in the workplace. I watched the three of them with the thought, "Serves you right." As the branch manager approached me, he said, "Ma'am, I'm sorry for the discomfort you've experienced here." He bowed deeply to me, and Ethan and Karen followed suit, likely due to the branch manager's presence. "Oh, no, it's fine. You came to withdraw your lottery winnings, right? Let me assist you with that." Thanks to the branch manager's smooth handling, I successfully withdrew my winnings and suddenly became a millionaire. A few days later, Ethan kept calling me incessantly. I regretted not blocking his number. At first, I ignored the calls, but they were so persistent that I finally answered. "Hello, Emily. Thank goodness you answered." Ever since that day, my boss has been furious. They say having someone like you involved affects the bank's reputation. Isn't that unfair? I've worked hard all this time. I sighed heavily, understanding the situation. That boss sounds like a wise person. Maybe they think someone with your lack of character could eventually harm the bank. Ethan stuttered at my calm response. "Besides, the only thing you've worked hard on is womanizing, right?" "Well, that's. I really couldn't care less about your precarious position at the bank. Take care." I hung up, feeling a bit more relieved. Later, I heard from an acquaintance that Ethan was demoted and transferred to a rural branch. He was punished for the scandal and disorder he caused in the bank. Karen, having witnessed the whole scene of Ethan pleading to get back with me after learning about my winnings, furiously confronted Ethan. "Actually, the baby isn't yours." "Well, maybe it's not yours." I had other marriage candidates, and I thought marrying an elite banker like you would be a good choice. But a demoted, uncertain bank employee is of no use to me. I'll marry someone better. Goodbye." She had other suitors and was only considering remarrying Ethan because she thought he was an elite banker. Once he was just an ordinary employee with an unstable position, she decided he was no longer useful and left him. Ethan was eventually abandoned by his mistress, left by his wife and child, and found his position at work in jeopardy. It was a tale more frightening than any horror story. It truly felt like a well-deserved comeuppance. As for me, with the lottery winnings, I moved to a new apartment with my daughter. While the $6 million windfall meant I could. I have chosen not to work. I decided to be cautious and soon found a job, returning to my role as a full-time caregiver. I wanted to avoid reckless spending, considering my daughter's future. However, I did indulge in a bit of luxury. I took my daughter and my parents on a trip to Hawaii, staying in a great hotel. Being able to show my gratitude to my parents and spending quality time with my daughter made it all worthwhile. Moving forward, I look forward to traveling more with my daughter, learning new things, and maybe finding new hobbies and passions. I'm excited to start this new chapter of life with my lovely daughter, living happily ever after.
Mom, can we go to Aunt Rose's cabin this summer? I miss the animals and the open fields, Ellie said, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. I glanced at her from the kitchen sink, wiped my hands on a towel, and smiled. Of course, sweetheart. We'll go as soon as school is out. Ellie beamed, her face lighting up the room. Derek, my husband, sat at the dining table, scrolling through his phone. He barely looked up. Can't you two ever stay home? This cabin obsession is ridiculous. Derek, it's just a few weeks. Ellie loves it there, and so do I said, my voice calm but firm. Ellie, undeterred by her father's lack of enthusiasm, joined in. Yes, I can't wait to help Aunt Rose with the animals again. Derek sighed, tapping incessantly on his phone. Well, don't expect me to join. I've got too much work. Projects don't manage themselves. Fine, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. We'll manage without you. His eyes finally met mine, a flicker of frustration surfacing. Just make sure you stay reachable. I don't want the same issue as last time. I nodded, turning back to Ellie. Start packing your things, kiddo. We leave Saturday morning. Ellie dashed out of the room, her excitement palpable. Derek pushed his chair back noisily, the legs scraping against the floor. Anyway, I'm heading out. Got a late meeting, he muttered, picking up his briefcase. Still clutching the towel, I watched him walk towards the door. Don't wait up, he added before leaving without a second glance. The door clicked shut, leaving a silence that felt heavier than it should have. Saturday arrived swiftly. The drive to Rose's cabin was long but peaceful. Ellie sang along to her favorite songs as we navigated through winding roads and lush forests. When we finally pulled up to the cabin, Rose was already outside, waving enthusiastically. Aunt Rose, Ellie hollered, leaping out of the car and sprinting towards her. Rose caught her in a big hug, laughing heartily. Look at you, you've grown since I last saw you, Rose exclaimed, ruffling Ellie's hair. I joined them, giving Rose a tight hug. It's good to be here, I admitted, breathing in the crisp mountain air. Come on in. Maxwell's inside making lunch, Rose said, guiding us towards the door. Inside, the cabin smelled like home. Fresh bread, herbs, and a hint of something sweet. Maxwell, Rose's husband, greeted us with his apron on, brandishing a spatula like a knight with his sword. Ladies, welcome back. Ready for some homemade lasagna? He asked, grinning widely. As we settled in, I felt a sense of peace wash over me, the opposite of the tension back at home. Ellie quickly got busy helping Rose feed the animals while I unpacked. That evening, we all sat around the dinner table, the warm glow of the cabin's light casting cozy shadows. Ellie chatted with Rose and Maxwell about school, her friends, and excitement for summer. Rose glanced at me, her eyes silently asking how things were. I gave her a small nod, indicating we'd talk later. Later that night, while Ellie slept soundly in the loft, Rose and I sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets against the cool night air. "So, how's Derek?" Rose asked cautiously. "Working as usual," I replied, taking a sip from my mug. "Things aren't great, Rose. He's distant, always working or on his phone," Rose sighed. "I see. And you? How are you holding up?" "One day at a time," I said, forcing a smile. "But being here helps. It's like a breath of fresh air after years of suffocation." Rose reached over and squeezed my hand. "Remember, you always have us. This place is as much yours as it is ours." The weight of her words settled over me, filling me with a sense of hope and strength I hadn't felt in a while. Watching the stars twinkle above, I allowed myself to imagine a future, one where Ellie and I found true happiness, even if that meant breaking away from Derek's oppressive indifference. Sunday morning at the cabin started with the sounds of roosters crowing and cows mooing. Ellie was already up and about, helping Rose with the morning chores. I could hear her giggles drifting through the open window as I slowly woke up, appreciating the quiet bustle of the farm. I grabbed a cup of coffee and walked outside to join them. Ellie was brushing one of the horses, her face aglow with happiness. Rose gave me a knowing smile from the chicken coop. "Morning, sis. Ready to dive into farm life?" she teased, scattering feed for the clucking chickens. "I'm ready," I answered, taking a sip of my coffee and feeling more at peace than I had in months. Entering the barn, I noticed the walls covered with old family photos and memorabilia. One picture showed Rose and me as kids, sitting on the same horse Ellie was now brushing. This place was full of history and life, everything my suburban home wasn't. Suddenly, my phone buzzed with a message from Derek. "Where are the files I asked for? This is urgent," I replied quickly, hands trembling slightly. "I sent them last night. Did you check your email?" His reply came swiftly. "Check again. They're not there. Why can't you do anything, right?" Rose must have seen the tension on my face. She walked over, wiping her hands on her jeans. "Is it Derek?" "Yeah, he's on about work, as usual," I sighed, pocketing my phone. Rose raised an eyebrow. "He should know you're on break. Doesn't he try to grasp family time at all?" I shook my head, feeling a knot tighten in my chest. "Let's not talk about him right now. What's next on our farm to-do list?" By the afternoon, Maxwell and Ellie had convinced me to join them in the fields to check on the crops. I watched as Ellie ran happily between the rows, her hair catching the golden light. This was what freedom felt like. Maxwell handed me a basket. "Think you can handle picking tomatoes?" "I think I can manage," I replied with a smile, bending down to start picking the ripe, red fruits. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed again, but this time I ignored it, focusing instead on the weight of the tomatoes in my hand and the richness of the soil beneath my feet. Later that day, Derek called. His voice was sharp, cutting through the serenity of the farm like a knife. "Why didn't you respond to my texts? What's so important there that you can't manage a simple email?" "We're busy here, Derek. It's good for Ellie to be outside, you know?" I answered, trying to keep my tone even. "She needs stability, not to be dragged off to the middle of nowhere," he retorted. I turned away from the house, looking out at the rolling fields. "She's stable here, happier than she's been in a long time." A heavy silence hung on the line before Derek spoke again, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Well, enjoy playing farmer. Don't count on me rescuing you when this little fantasy falls apart." As the call ended, I felt a wave of emotion swell inside me. Anger, frustration, and a fierce protectiveness towards Ellie and our time at the cabin. Rose came up behind me, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Hey, everything okay?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, just Derek being Derek." Rose nodded knowingly. "He'll never understand this life, but that's his loss, not ours." Looking around at the calm and beauty surrounding us, I realized Rose was right. Derek might never get it, but that wasn't my problem anymore. Here in the mountains, I felt a sense of clarity and strength. A place where our lives could be rebuilt, one simple, fulfilling day at a time. We had been at Rose's cabin for a little over a week when Ellie came rushing in with wide eyes. "Mom, I saw a fox near the chicken coop. He was trying to get in." Rose looked up from the kitchen table, concern etched on her face. "A fox? That's not good. We need to secure the coop better." Ellie nodded earnestly. "Can we build something to protect the chickens?" Rose smiled. "Sure thing. We can make a stronger fence and set up some lights to scare it away." I was getting coffee when an idea hit me. Actually, I read about a new eco-friendly project at work. It uses renewable energy to create deterrents for predators. Maybe we could apply that to the farm. "Really, Mom? That sounds cool." Ellie's eyes sparkled with renewed excitement. Rose got up, intrigued. "Tell me more about it." I explained the concept, feeling a surge of enthusiasm. It's an ecotech project. It's solar-powered lights and sounds to keep predators away without harming them. I could talk to my boss and see if we could test it out here. Maxwell chimed in from the doorway. "Sounds like a great idea. Anything to keep the chickens safe and maybe even make things more sustainable around here." A few days later, I broached the project idea with my boss during a video call. I was thinking maybe we could pilot our ecotech project at my sister's farm. It's perfect for testing renewable energy solutions. My boss, a middle-aged man with a kind face, nodded thoughtfully. "That's an interesting proposal, Hannah. If it works, it could be a great case study. Go ahead and draft a plan, and we'll review it." I felt a jolt of excitement as I hung up the call. Ellie had overheard the conversation and came running. "Mom, are we really going to help Aunt Rose with your project?" "Yes, Ellie. If it gets approved, it'll be a great help to the farm." That night, I couldn't help but share the news with Derek, hoping for a small sign of encouragement. "I talked to my boss about the eco project. He's interested. We might get to pilot it here." Derek snorted. "You're really planning to dig in the dirt now? How ambitious." I clenched my teeth, trying to keep calm. "It's not about dirt. It's about making a difference, using what I know to help my family." He scoffed, his voice dripping with disdain. "Just make sure you don't mess it up. I can't have you falling behind at work because of this ridiculous farm fantasy." I hung up, feeling a mix of anger and determination. Derek's words stung, but they also fueled my resolve. This project wasn't just about the farm. It was a chance to show him and myself what I was capable of. After that call, Rose found me sitting on the porch, looking out at the darkened fields. "Rough conversation?" I nodded. "Derek doesn't believe I can do it, but I need to prove him wrong for Ellie's sake and mine." Rose sat down beside me, her presence comforting. "You've got this, Hannah. Whatever you need, we're here to support you." Hearing those words gave me the strength to push forward. I went back inside, ready to start drafting a detailed plan for the ecotech project. As the days went by, I poured myself into the proposal, detailing every step and potential outcome. Each part of the plan felt like one more way to break free from Derek's toxic grip to create a better future for Ellie and me. Finally, I submitted the plan to my boss. Now, all that was left was to wait for approval, but deep down, I knew I was already moving forward. Here at the cabin, we had started something real, something that could change everything. The sun was setting when Ellie wandered into the living room, her face thoughtful. "Mom, I saw Daddy with a lady today." I glanced up from my laptop, my heart skipping a beat. "What do you mean, sweetie?" "While we were driving back from town, he was at a cafe with a lady. They were holding hands." The room seemed to close in around me. Rose, sitting nearby, caught my eye. She looked as shocked as I felt. "Did you recognize her?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Ellie shook her head. "No, but they looked very friendly." I nodded slowly, masking my emotions. "Thanks for telling me, Ellie. Matt, why don't you go finish your homework?" Once Ellie had left the room, Rose leaned in, concerned. "What do you think is going on, Hannah?" I exhaled deeply. "I don't know, but it's time I found out for sure." The next day, I decided to call a private investigator. The idea of an affair had tormented me before, but Ellie's observation pushed me to act. I listed all the details I knew, feeling a mix of dread and determination. As days went by, I fell into a routine at the cabin, masking my anxiety with work on the eco project. Then the investigator called. "Hannah, I have some information. Derek's been meeting a woman regularly. I have photos and messages." My stomach churned, but I steadied myself. "Send me everything." The evidence came through email, a series of incriminating photos, clearly showing Derek and a woman at various places. My hands shook as I clicked on the messages, reading his flirtatious and deceitful words. With a deep breath, I called Derek. "We need to talk." He sighed loudly. "What now, Hannah?" "I know about her. I've seen the messages and the photos." There was a pause before he responded, aggravation dripping from his voice. "So what? Was it your little detective act that uncovered this? You were never here anyway, always off playing farmer." I clenched my fists, the anger building. "I was here for our daughter and our family. You're the one who shirked responsibility." His laugh was cold and unfeeling. "Responsibility, right? Look, don't pretend you're some saint. Enjoy your cabin life while it lasts." I could hear the contempt in his words, but it only steeled my resolve. "Derek, I'm done. I deserve better. Ellie deserves better. I'm starting divorce proceedings." Silence lingered before he spoke, voice rigid with controlled rage. "Fine, do whatever you think you have to, but don't expect this to be easy." Hanging up, I felt a strange relief wash over me. It was time to move forward, free from his deceit and toxic presence. I found Rose in the garden, her hands deep in the soil. "How did it go?" she asked, wiping dirt off her hands. "I told him it's over," I replied, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "I'm going to start the proceedings. It's time, for me and for Ellie." Rose stood and hugged me. "Good for you, Hannah. We'll do this together." As the days passed, I started gathering everything needed for the legal battle ahead. The cabin felt more like home with each passing day, a place where Ellie and I could build a new life, one honest step at a time. With support from Rose and Maxwell, I contacted a lawyer to begin the divorce process. The road ahead was daunting, but for the first time in a long time, I felt empowered. Our new beginning was within reach, firmly rooted in the love and strength of family. I stepped into the lawyer's office, my heart pounding. A young assistant guided me to a sleek conference room where a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a confident smile greeted me. "Ms. Anderson, I'm Karen Mitchell. Please, sit down," she said, extending her hand. Shaking her hand, I sat down. "Thank you for seeing me on such short notice." Karen leaned forward, her demeanor professional yet warm. "Let's get straight to it. You've decided to file for divorce. Tell me everything." I recounted the recent events, culminating with Derek's blatant admission of infidelity. Karen took notes, nodding occasionally. "We need to gather all possible evidence of his misconduct. This will strengthen your case, especially concerning alimony and child support." A sudden thought struck me. Derek's former colleague, Karen, might help. She's openly despised him since he mishandled a project that cost her a promotion. Karen arched an eyebrow. "Do you think she'd testify against him?" "I believe she would. She's got no love lost for Derek." Karen smiled. "Good. I'll contact her." Leaving the office, I felt the first flickers of hope. I was taking steps, concrete steps, towards a better future for Ellie and me. The sense of forward movement was empowering. Back at the cabin, Ellie met me at the door. "Mom, how did it go?" I knelt down, hugging her tightly. "We're making progress, Ellie. We're going to be okay." A few days later, Karen, Derek's former colleague, agreed to meet us at a local cafe. She was a tall woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, her eyes sharp and assessing. "So, Derek finally screwed up enough for you to leave him, huh?" Karen said, sipping her coffee. I nodded, feeling a pang of hurt at the bluntness. "He's been having an affair. I need to prove his irresponsibility, especially financially." Karen leaned in slightly. "Believe me, I've got dirt on Derek. He's been fudging accounts and embezzling funds." My stomach turned. "Can you prove this?" Karen gave a wicked smile. "I've got emails, transaction records, the works. I've been saving them for an occasion exactly like this." Later, I shared the news with Rose and Maxwell at the dinner table. Ellie was at her friend's house, so it was just the three of us. "Karen's going to help. She has proof Derek's been embezzling," I said. Rose's fork froze halfway to her mouth. "Embezzling? That changes everything." Maxwell nodded. "If he's guilty of fraud, we've got leverage. He can't brush this off or bully you into submission." Armed with Karen's evidence, I felt more prepared than ever. The next week dragged by in a blur of legal preparations and emotional turmoil. Finally, the day of confrontation arrived. Derek showed up at the lawyer's office, his expression a mix of anger and defiance. "What's this about, Hannah? More baseless accusations?" I stood tall, Karen by my side. "No, Derek, This is about your fraudulent activities and how you've wronged our family. The color drained from his face, disbelief and rage battling for dominance. You're bluffing, he spat. Karen laid out the evidence calmly, piece by piece. Derek's facade crumbled as he realized the gravity of his situation. This is insane. You can't trust her. She's lying. Karen looked unperturbed. The court will decide that, Mr. Anderson. I watched Derek, his composure shattering, revealing the scared, selfish man beneath. What do you want? He finally muttered, beaten. I want a fair divorce settlement, full custody of Ellie, and alimony, I stated firmly. Derek's eyes were cold, but he knew there was no escape. Fine, take what you want, just get out of my life. As I walked out of the office, a mixture of relief and resolve flooded me. Rose and Maxwell were waiting outside, their faces alight with anticipation. It's over, I told them, my voice steady. We've won the first battle. Rose hugged me tightly. You did it, Hannah. Now it's time for the next chapter. Maxwell clapped me on the back. Onwards and upwards, sister. With their support and the evidence in our favor, the future began to glow with promise. It was time to build a new life, one where Ellie and I could truly thrive. The courtroom buzzed with hushed whispers as I took my seat next to Karen. Derek's attorney, a grizzled man with a stern face, shuffled papers at the opposite table. Derek sat beside him, glaring at me with a mixture of anger and desperation. Karen leaned over, her voice low but reassuring. Stick to the facts. We have all the evidence we need. The judge, a stern-looking man with glasses perched on the tip of his nose, banged his gavel. Court is now in session for the case of Anderson versus Anderson. Derek's lawyer stood up first, his voice smooth and rehearsed. Your Honor, we contend that Mrs. Anderson is exaggerating claims of misconduct to gain an unfair advantage in the divorce settlement. I felt a surge of anger, but Karen squeezed my arm subtly, grounding me. When it was our turn, Karen presented the evidence methodically, starting with Derek's infidelity. Your Honor, here are messages proving Mr. Anderson's affair, she said, handing the judge a folder. The judge glanced over the papers, then looked at Derek. Mr. Anderson, do you deny the validity of these messages? Derek remained silent, his face a mix of defiance and fear. Next, Karen presented the evidence of embezzlement. She displayed emails, bank statements, and transaction records, each a nail in Derek's coffin. This evidence clearly highlights Mr. Anderson's fraudulent activities, which have compromised not only his marriage, but also his professional integrity, Karen stated firmly. Derek's lawyer attempted to object, but the judge silenced him with a wave of his hand. Mr. Anderson, do you have any defense for these claims? Derek stood up, his facade crumbling. These are lies, fabrications to ruin me. The judge's gaze was cold. The evidence speaks loud and clear, Mr. Anderson. Karen shot me a supportive glance. It was time for the final blow. Karen stood up. Your Honor, we ask for full custody of Ellie Anderson, alimony, and that Mr. Anderson be held accountable for his fraudulent actions. Derek exploded. This is a setup. She's turning my daughter against me. The judge banged his gavel again, bringing order to the chaos. Mr. Anderson, enough. I will review the evidence and issue a ruling shortly. We left the courtroom to wait for the judge's decision, my nerves stretched thin. Rose and Maxwell arrived, bringing comfort and moral support. Finally, the judge called us back in. As everyone settled, he looked straight at Derek, his voice firm. Based on the overwhelming evidence of infidelity and financial misconduct, this court grants Mrs. Daff Anderson full custody of Ellie Anderson, as well as alimony and child support. Furthermore, I am referring Mr. Anderson's fraudulent activities to the appropriate authorities. Derek's face turned white, then red with fury. This is a witch hunt, he screamed. You can't do this to me. Karen stood up, unflappable. Justice has been served, Mr. Anderson. The judge banged his gavel one last time. Court is adjourned. As we filed out, a weight lifted off my shoulders. Rose hugged me tightly, her eyes filled with tears of relief. It's finally over, Hannah. You did it. Ellie, who had been waiting with Maxwell in the hallway, ran up to me. Mom, are we really away from Dad now? I picked her up, holding her close. Yes, sweetheart, we're free. Maxwell clapped me on the back. Time to start that new chapter, huh? I nodded, my heart swelling with hope. With Derek facing legal consequences and having lost the fight, the path was clear. Karen shook my hand warmly. You were strong through this, Hannah. Now, go make that new life you deserve. As we left the courthouse, I felt a sense of renewal. The battle had been fierce, but we had emerged victorious. The road ahead was bright and open, ready for us to walk it together as a family. Weeks after the court's ruling, the news about Derek's financial misconduct spread like wildfire. His once commanding presence at work was reduced to whispers and suspicious glances. One afternoon, Karen called me. "Hannah, have you seen the news?" "No, why?" I asked, sensing something significant. "Derek's been fired. The board found out about his embezzlement. They've terminated his contract." I felt a rush of satisfaction. "He's really facing the consequences now," Karen chuckled. "It's far from over. He's being investigated by the authorities for fraud. He won't be getting away with anything." At home, Rose and I couldn't help but feel a sense of justice. Later that evening, Ellie and I sat on the porch, the sky painted with the hues of sunset. "Mom, will Daddy be okay?" she asked softly. I looked at her, choosing my words carefully. "He made bad choices, sweetie. Now he has to face the music. But you and we're safe, and that's what matters." News outlets soon picked up Derek's story, his name plastered with accusations and scandal. One day Karen called again, sounding triumphant. "Hannah, the judge ruled that Derek must pay full child support and alimony. They've frozen his assets to cover it." I felt a mix of relief and triumph. "Thank you, Karen. You've been incredible through all this." "My pleasure, Hannah. Now go enjoy your life." The following weeks brought more signs of Derek's downfall. He tried to contact me several times, but I ignored his calls. One evening, I finally picked up, anticipating his outrage. "You've ruined my life, Hannah." Derek's voice was a blend of anger and desperation. "You did this to yourself, Derek," I replied evenly. "You made your choices. Now live with them." "Do you think you're so perfect? You're just hiding on that stupid farm, pretending everything's okay," he sneered. I took a deep breath, holding back a retort. "Ellie and I are happy, Derek. We're moving on, and you should do the same." Slamming the phone down, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Derek's words couldn't hurt us anymore. A few days later, Rose came rushing into the cabin with the newspaper. "Hannah, look at this!" The headline read, "Former executive faces jail time for fraud." The article detailed Derek's impending court dates and the serious charges against him. Maxwell clapped his hands, grinning. "Looks like karma finally caught up with him." I nodded, feeling a deep sense of closure. "It's over, really over." Ellie joined us, her face curious. "What's going on?" I hugged her tightly. "Nothing to worry about, sweetie. Just some old news. We're free now." Ellie's smile reaffirmed what I felt inside. The shadow Derek had cast over our lives was gone. We could now embrace the future without looking back. As Derek's life unraveled, ours blossomed. The ecotech project at the farm began to thrive, bringing new energy and purpose. Ellie adapted to her new school, making friends and finding joy in the simple pleasures of one evening. As we finished dinner, Ellie looked at me with excitement. "Mom, can we invite my friends over to see the farm? They'd love it here." I smiled, my heart swelling with pride. "Of course, Ellie. This is our home, and we should share it." Rose and Maxwell nodded in agreement, their faces reflecting the sentiment. With each passing day, the cabin felt more like home, a place of healing and growth. As the sun set on our past struggles, I knew we were ready to embrace whatever future awaited us, brimming with newfound strength and hope. The final court ruling had made it clear Derek had lost everything. Seeing the news, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication, but my focus now was entirely on building a new life for Ellie and myself. We officially moved into Rose's cabin. The small space felt cozy and welcoming, filled with the smell of fresh bread and the sound of laughter, elements drastically missing from our old home. Ellie thrived, her once anxious demeanor replaced by a radiant smile. One crisp morning, as we sipped our coffee on the porch, Rose turned to me. "Guess what? The ecotech project got mentioned in the local paper again. They're calling it a model for sustainable farming." "That's fantastic news, Rose," I exclaimed, feeling immense pride and relief. That afternoon, Ellie had her friends over. They fed the chickens, ran through the fields, and took turns on the tire swing. Their laughter echoed, filling the space with youthful joy. "Mom, I love it here," Ellie said, throwing her arms around me. "I never want to leave." "I'm glad, Ellie. This is our home now," I replied, hugging her back tightly. Meanwhile, Derek took every opportunity to try disrupting our peace. One evening, as we sat down for dinner, my phone buzzed with a message. "Derek again?" Rose asked, seeing my face tense. "Let's see." I opened the message. Derek had somehow found out about our success with the Ecotech project. "Enjoy your little success while it lasts. You're nothing without me," his text read. I rolled my eyes, showing it to Rose and Maxwell. "He's desperate," Maxwell remarked. "Ignore him." Agreed. Rose said, "He's just trying to rattle you." I nodded, blocking his number. "He can't touch us now. We're stronger than he thinks." Over the next months, Derek's situation worsened. He lost his house and friends, his reputation in tatters. Occasionally, I'd hear bits of news about his struggles, but I remained focused on our new life. His downfall was a testament to the karma that had finally caught up with him. One morning, we were interrupted by an unexpected knock at the door. Karen stood there, looking pleased. "Good news," she announced. "Derek's been sentenced to prison for fraud. The chapter is truly closed." A rush of relief swept over me. "Thank you, Karen, for everything." "You earned this, Hannah," she replied. "Now, live your best life." As Karen left, Rose clapped her hands, gathering everyone outside. "This calls for a celebration." We spent the day enjoying an impromptu barbecue, Ellie playing with her friends and Maxwell strumming his guitar. The air was filled with laughter and music, a sharp contrast to the struggle and pain we'd endured. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Ellie snuggled up beside me, her eyes reflecting the twinkling stars. "Mom, I'm so glad we're here. I feel free," she said softly. I kissed her forehead. "Me too, Ellie. We're exactly where we belong." That night, as everyone settled into the cabin, I took a moment to step outside. The sky was clear and the stars shone brightly. I breathed in the fresh mountain air, feeling the weight of the past lift completely. Our new beginning wasn't without its challenges, but it was filled with hope and endless possibilities. Here, surrounded by family and nature, we had found our sanctuary. And as Derek faced the consequences of his actions, I felt a deep sense of justice. This life, this freedom, was the karma he could never touch. For Ellie and me, it was a testament to our resilience and a promise of a brighter future.
I'm Luna, and I'm 35 years old. My spouse, Mason, is 3 years my senior, and we were married 6 years ago. My dear father died of a disease and left me with a sizable inheritance, which drastically altered my life. I bought a new house with my bequest, which I treasure very much. This house has a comfortable aroma of freshly cut wood, and I can't help but think how happy my father would be to see it. My father used to live alone in our previous home, which was only 10 minutes' walk from our apartment. My father died from a fall not long after I moved out a few years ago, following the death of my mother. I had to make the tough choice to tear down our old family home and replace it with a new one after receiving the inheritance. The happy memories we created there, even though the old house's structure is gone, I think will always be in our hearts. Mason frequently cited my father when discussing the importance of starting over with a new house. I initially believed he was attempting to console me, but that quickly proved to be untrue. Mason suddenly requested me to fill out and mail divorce papers one evening. Perplexed, I inquired about his meaning. He told me quite frankly that we were divorcing and that the new house he was having constructed with my father's money was for his mistress, who he was going to live with. I was taken aback upon discovering his adultery, in sharp contrast to how he described our relationship. He acknowledged having an affair for approximately 9 months, during which time he described his mistress as charming, caring, and truly in love with him. Mason said he would take the house as alimony, saying he had no further benefits from our 6-year marriage that had produced children, and that he always hated returning home to me. I went to Mason for solace since I was upset, but he gave me the finger instead. He said that my behavior influenced him to have an affair and ultimately decide to leave, and he held me accountable for his actions. He called it my alimony and gave me an envelope containing $12,000, telling me to be thankful since he was about to move into the new house. Feeling both overwhelmed and composed at the same time, I gave the envelope back to him and declined the money. Constructed with memories and inheritance in mind, the mansion was intended to be a haven, but it was now the focus of a devastating discovery. I said unequivocally, "If you no longer love me, there's no reason for us to stay married." And I consented to the divorce. I don't require cash. Mason expressed amazement at how easily I came to terms with our marriage's dissolution. He acknowledged and said, "Well, if you say so, just don't ask for it back later." He packed up his things and departed a few days later, taking the keys to our freshly constructed home with him. But soon after he moved out, Mason contacted me hysterically, his voice strained with fear. "What actions did you take?" When the police arrived at the house, they discussed trespassing charges and warrants. "What is happening?" He claimed that while he was with his lover, the cops had broken in and demanded to know if they knew it was lawful to do what they were doing. "You entered this residence using a stolen key, which is theft and trespassing, which is why we are here. Are you aware of that?" The cops said. Shaken and disoriented, Mason turned to face his lover, who looked at him with equal confusion. "This is your home, right?" she muttered. "You mentioned that you wanted to show me." He angrily yelled, "Be quiet and stay out of this," to which one cop cut him off. "Sorry to disrupt, but we need to handle this at the station." Mason called me desperate, caught between his woman and the police. "Why is this occurring right now? How did you act?" Calmly, "I haven't done much," was my response. "I just reported that there were strangers in my house and that my house keys were stolen. It makes sense to contact the police." I had already reported the incident, reverted to my maiden name Luna, and filed the divorce papers. "This is my home, Mason," I firmly stated as I went on. "Didn't you agree to give it to us as alimony?" "I never consented to that," he disagreed. "You may easily manipulate events to support your story." "Are you kidding? How on earth do you think you own that house?" "The person on the house contract is me. I own the land and I paid for it with my father's inheritance," I declared categorically. Mason said, "But your father said it was for us. You were my husband at the time. Now that we are divorced, we hardly know one another. Why do you believe that this is your land?" I snapped back. When he became sick, my father made the sensible decision to give me the land rights in order to avoid any issues in the event that something occurred to him. Maybe he anticipated something similar, which is why he suggested tearing down the old house and erecting a new one. I could see more clearly than ever before that property and money might readily turn into sources of conflict. Mason's ordinarily composed manner began to make sense to me after I agreed to the divorce. I thought, "So you planned this all along?" "I did nothing wrong," he shot back, sounding defensive. "From the beginning, you have misinterpreted every detail." Seeing him so naive and believing he would be content with his mistress was almost comical. "Stop being so silly," I shot back. "You hold me responsible for the divorce, the affair, and the house's loss. Now that you're caught between your fiancé and the authorities, how does that feel?" Mason, obviously unhappy with the turn of events, could only moan in response. "Hating me is the wrong path. Your whole mess is what you're doing. Do you know the saying, you reap what you sow? You deserve this." Mason lost control of his temper at that point and started yelling accusations into the phone. But all of a sudden, he was cut off. "Excuse me, are you the former wife of Mr. Gold? He's making a mess at your place. Please, might we have a word?" The call had been taken over by a policeman. After giving the officer a brief explanation of the circumstances, She expressed empathy for how challenging this must have been for me. Mason was later brought to the police station along with his mistress. Mason argued that it wasn't trespassing because the house was a gift from me. With genuine surprise, his mistress admitted that she was unaware that they were intruding. Mason attempted to bolster his allegations at the station with purported evidence, but in the end, the mistress's account was deemed reliable, and she was just given a warning before being released. However, Mason was fined after being found guilty of trespassing and larceny. Then it came up that, upon his release, Mason had named me as his guarantor, presumably so his controlling parents wouldn't know. The officer gave me this information, obviously frustrated. Why should I act as his surety? Now that we're divorced and essentially strangers, I firmly replied. I declined because I no longer have any relationship with Mr. Gold. His parents live close by. Kindly get in touch with them. The officer informed Mason, who was visibly frustrated. His parents, who were already aware of our divorce, due to his infidelity, were not yet informed of his attempt to take the new house. The police call had brought them fully up to speed on the situation. Reluctantly, after his parents requested more details, I visited Mason's parents' house. When I knocked on the door and started to explain, his mother immediately cut me off. No need to apologize, she said. It's all my foolish son's fault. But did you know about this? I inquired. Well, my son is here with his mistress, a much younger woman, she revealed. We allowed them into the living room to discuss the situation. To my astonishment, Mason had brought his mistress along, creating a tense atmosphere. The living room scene unfolded with Mason, the young woman, and my stern-looking father-in-law, Russell. Russell, it's been a while. I'm sorry for the delay. I greeted them. Luna, thanks for coming, Russell responded. I apologize for calling you after the divorce, but I've heard Mason's side of the story. However, I can't fully trust someone who's been arrested for trespassing. Can you tell me your side? I recounted everything as requested. Throughout my explanation, Mason and his mistress kept their heads bowed, avoiding eye contact. What were you thinking? Trying to take Luna's new house? Are you insane? Russell demanded of Mason. It's not that simple, Mason interjected. How is that even possible? Russell retorted, clearly frustrated. Your story is completely different from hers. Apparently, Mason had spun his version of events before I arrived. What were you told? I asked. Russell explained. He claimed you willingly transferred the house to him, then changed your story and reported him, leading to his wrongful arrest. Really? He said that. I was incredulous. It's true that when we discussed the house, I didn't object, but that doesn't mean I agreed to transfer ownership to him. To suddenly claim the house as yours and report it is beyond comprehension. I'm so sorry, Luna, for having such a son. Mason's mother apologized. What are you saying, Mom? Mason argued. I'm telling the truth. Luna wasn't agreeing. She was too stunned to speak. I nodded in agreement with Russell. Despite everything, Mason continued to make excuses. Anyway, you never mentioned owning the land. If I'd known, I wouldn't have done this. If I had told you, you'd have found another excuse to do the same thing, I replied. How can you say that? Were you spending a lot on her? Mason asked, gesturing towards his mistress. No. Why would you think that? I responded. Right after our divorce, I happened to run into one of your colleagues. When I mentioned the divorce, I received some shocking information that left me reeling. I continued. Mason's college had looked uncomfortable during our conversation. No offense, but I thought it might happen. The colleague had said, "What do you mean? Didn't he tell you?" I asked, the colleague shifting uncomfortably. The colleague finally spilled everything, revealing details that I should have known sooner. I wasn't initially aware of the full extent of Mason's actions, but a conversation with one of his colleagues soon brought everything to light. Mason had been openly bragging about his mistress, a woman 15 years his junior, lavishing her with expensive bags and jewelry. He boasted about his plans, even sharing that he intended to divorce me to marry his mistress, capitalizing on her recent inheritance from her deceased father to build a new house. He said, "Once the house is built, I'll divorce Luna and somehow claim it. No matter the opposition, I'll get it. Then my young new wife and I will live in the big house." The colleague recounted, it seemed the house built with my father's inheritance was not just a home, but a grand gesture intended for his proposal to her. Hearing this, I confronted Mason. "I've heard everything. Do you still insist you did nothing wrong?" I asked, my frustration evident. Mason, visibly flustered, attempted to justify his actions. "Well, yes. I bought her gifts. So what? I used my own money and gave Luna her living expenses. She's not my destined partner. This woman is. I brought her here today to announce our marriage." His parents, present during this confession, reacted with shock. However, the most astonishing response came from the mistress herself. "Mary, did I ever say that we were even dating?" she declared. "What do you mean?" Mason asked, bewildered. "Exactly that," she replied firmly. "I'm not in a relationship with him. I only approached him for a sugar daddy arrangement. I told you from the start that I was looking for someone for that kind of arrangement, and even married men were acceptable. You agreed to it initially, but now what are you talking about?" "That's creepy," she stated. Mason went pale, stunned by her revelation. At that point, I asked her, "So why did you come here with him today?" The mistress explained, "I came to ask for more time to pay the alimony. I knew he was married, so it was an affair, and I was prepared to pay the alimony. But I'm still a student." "A student? How old are you?" Russell, Mason's father, interjected, looking bewildered. "I lost my parents early and have been engaging in sugar dating to pay for college. I sold all the gifts for living expenses," she confessed. This revelation turned the entire room silent, leaving everyone to digest the depth of deception and the surprising turn of events. As the discussion unfolded, the mistress clarified her financial situation, indicating she didn't have savings to immediately start paying the alimony. "I've just secured a job and can start paying alimony from my salary," she explained. "So you came here to ask me to wait for the alimony?" I asked. "Yes, that's right," she confirmed. Mason, who had been silently listening, suddenly erupted in anger. "Didn't you hear her? Unfortunately, she never intended to marry or even date you. But that's separate from the alimony you owe," I pointed out, trying to steer the conversation back to the matter at hand. "What about saying you wanted a house?" Mason challenged the mistress. "I meant I'd want a house someday when I marry. It wasn't about marrying you," she replied, clarifying her intentions. Mason exclaimed in disbelief, "I was suddenly taken to that house, thinking it was yours. Then the police came, and I learned it was your wife's." The mistress bowed deeply to me, indicating her respect and acknowledging that all of this confusion was spurred by Mason's misunderstandings. "All right," I said, seeing an opportunity to resolve at least one issue. If you promise to pay the alimony properly, I'll wait for the payment. But promise me no more sugar dating. It might not end simply next time. I promise I'll never do it again, she said earnestly. Turning to Mason, I addressed the financial aspects of our separation. Expect a claim for alimony from me without delay. Alimony? What are you talking about? Mason asked, taken aback and not expecting to pay alimony himself. You said you didn't need alimony when you returned the money, I reminded him. I gave you $122,000, and now you're asking for more. That's not what we agreed on. Mason protested. I don't recall any agreement. I replied, You returned the $122,000 I gave you, saying you didn't need it. What I meant was that I didn't need such a trivial amount for alimony. Do you have any idea how much alimony for infidelity is? It's $30,000, I clarified. And you're also at fault for not having children in the 6 years we were married. Mason suddenly accused, changing the subject. At that moment, a loud slap echoed through the room. Someone asked, What are you doing, Mason? He held his cheek, clearly stunned by the impact. Are you serious? Do you think her inability to have children is her fault? I asked, incredulous at his audacity. Enough with jokes, Dad. Mason's father interrupted, turning to him. Don't tell me you're blaming Luna for your affair, too. Mason stubbornly stated, Well, that's how it is. I shouldn't have tied the knot with her. It resembles fraud. How on earth did you think that? I put into the test. Your parents desired to have grandchildren. They decided it would be best to separate if she was unable to conceive. I chose her for that reason. Mason's father remarked, looking plainly upset. We must have raised you incorrectly if you really think that. Your mother waited 8 years to become pregnant. Before Mason was born, Deborah, Mason's mother, had to go through 8 arduous years of intensive reproductive treatments. Observing others have a simple time starting children while she battled caused her great stress and sadness. Tears were now streaming down her cheeks as she listened to the drama play out, a silent witness to the grief her son's actions had brought back. Russell, Mason's father, finally said, Leave this house now, clearly disappointed. Mason posed the obvious question, Why? Russell replied, You're a long-awaited son, and I can't bear to look at you now. His voice was laden with anguish. Remain away until you have a true understanding of your mistakes. But where ought I to go? Mason questioned, a hint of desperation in his tone. Go back to our apartment, I said. We've already canceled that flat. It was unnecessary to keep with the new house. I immediately canceled it after calling the police. There is nowhere for you to go back to. Mason realized he had nowhere to go and was clearly shaken. He attributed his mistress's actions to his frustration. You are to blame. You now claim you never meant to marry me, even though all the money has been spent. It is a scam, she answered calmly, saying, I was upfront about it being a sugar relationship. I never made gift or money requests. Feel free to file a lawsuit. But don't forget about the alimony. I have documentation of our agreement. I added, observing Mason become agitated. He stumbled and said, Wait, please wait. I ignored his request and called his parents to let them know what was going on before leaving their home. Later, after learning Mason no longer resided at his parents' home, I retained legal counsel and issued a demand letter for alimony. I ensured that it wasn't delivered there. The receptionist at his place of employment questioned, perplexed as she studied the letter. Why is it being sent here? Sending such documents to residential and employment addresses is feasible, I clarified. Is this what this is about? She asked, observing Mason's pallid, trembling appearance. Yes, I said. I simply stated the facts. I was not requested to be silent. It is his own fault. The demand letter that Mason's employer received immediately became public knowledge of his activities, including his engagement in sugar dating. His professional reputation took a hit as this revelation caused a larger conversation among his peers. Mason made the decision to go from his position, stating that he was departing on his terms, following a string of humiliating defeats and being unable to handle the rumors and murmurs. His troubles didn't end there. Feeling that he was a victim of marital fraud, he sought for free legal help. The legal advisor was not supportive, though. The advisor said, "We have seen cases similar to yours, but based on the evidence you have provided, this isn't considered fraud. At first, you consented to a sugar daddy relationship. If you later felt something, that was entirely your fault. If you want to sue, you can, but it will probably be a financial waste." Mason made the decision to drop the lawsuit after taking the advice. He'd eventually confided in me, feeling dejected and regretting his previous actions. I'm not sure what I was contemplating. I had no idea how important you were, even after 6 years of dating. He begged sincerely, "I swear I'll make you happy this time and won't let myself be distracted by others." He begged me, but I was unmoved. I made a clear decision. "I decline," I retorted firmly. "Why?" Following so much pleading. He did not give up. I had realized during those 6 years that Mason was not a good person. He tried to take what was rightfully mine, put all the blame on me, and then came back brazenly when he had lost everything, expecting to make amends. Why would I want to be back with someone who is so self-centered? I inquired. "You don't have to put it that way," said Mason. "The same things you said to me once." Still, I was determined. Knowing his current situation, I firmly said, "Never contact me again." After that, I hung up, erased all of his contact details, and modified my phone number. A few days later, something unanticipated happened. I was told by one of the neighbors, "Your ex-husband came to the house the other day. He made a disturbance, so we had to chase him away." What did he have in mind? Shocked, I pondered out loud. To scare him off, the local ladies, who were aware of the circumstances, had even feigned to call the police. I haven't seen him since, so I don't know where he is or what his circumstances are right now. However, I have no doubt that he is not living a happy life.